Hello everyone, Skippy here, and welcome to One Piece episode 914, directed by Yasunori Koyama and supervised by Masahiro Shimanuki and Hirotaka Ito. This episode marks the start of the hotly anticipated fight between Luffy and Kaido, and it's being handled by very strong staff to boot, as Koyama is a very strong director who learned from our co-series director Ayako Maki, and despite the quality of his art, Shimanuki is a respected supervisor who handled the most well-animated episode to date in form of 870, and the inclusion of strong staff member Hirotaka Ito as a co-supervisor will only make the end product even more polished. Combine that with the promise of talents both regular and non-regular attending the next two episodes, and 914 should very well end up being the solid episode that everyone expects it to be. I will admit that I am a little cautious about it considering how last week turned out, but the hype from the staff gives me hope that it will manage to kick off this fight and then some. So will episode 914 end up being an elephant gun of hype? Time to make like the 5th Emperor and go in head first to find out. This episode covers the last 2 pages of chapter 922 and the first 8 pages of chapter 923. And despite covering a small amount of pages, the episode itself still feels pretty well paced, all things considered. I mean, sure, some events are dragged out a bit like the Speed and Tama flashback, and they slightly readapt the content that was covered at the end of last week's episode, but it never really feels like it's overstaying its welcome at all, thanks due in part to not only Koyama's insanely atmospheric and colorful direction, as well as his wonderful OST choices, which includes some Stampede tracks, but also due to the small amount of filler scenes that were added here and there. At first glance, seeing Luffy run towards Kaido as he's rampaging the town, and Kinemon and Kiku discussing the event that just took place may not seem like much, but they go a long way in helping the episode feel both well-paced and more like a complete package, since we get a glimpse of how Kaido's rampage is really affecting everyone and everything, rather than just seeing Luffy go all in guns a-blazing, which perfectly portrays that sense of chaos that the manga had for these events, but in a bit of a different way. So it's not failing to deliver what it should because of a slower overall pace. They even managed to do the exact same thing with the fight itself, adding in filler scenes that are in line with the power gap between Luffy and Kaido in order to maintain that consistent pacing. While I'm sure that a lot of people, myself included, would have preferred if the fight was allocated to one episode only, I must say that Koyama still manages to do very well with the rather small amount of content that he was given to adapt, keeping the core of the source material intact, while also knowing when to expand upon things with well done filler in order to make it not feel as slow as molasses. When taking into consideration what Koyama's last major Wano episode was, I really do have to say that the adaptation display on here is a much needed improvement that shows just how skilled the director himself is. The efforts on display here from Koyama's storyboard not only reflect his Komaki-like sense of scale and emotion, but it also shows that he may be learning quite a lot when it comes to storyboarding action. While some of the cooler layouts can no doubt be attributed to some of the crazy animators that are on board this episode, Koyama still does extremely well with portraying such a powerful fight. Whether it be Luffy jumping from rooftop to rooftop, or going all in on Kaido with his elephant Gatling, Koyama's board interacts with the surrounding environments to really make the area feel like a battlefield, and creates some stylish and intense angles that view the fight from an interesting perspective that one-ups the manga in every way and leaves such a huge impact on you. Even when it's a more simple shot of Luffy flying down with his elephant gun or powering up his Gatling after being smacked down to the ground, Koyama still portrays the sheer scale and zeal of this battle flawlessly, and keeps you you on the absolute edge of your seat at every moment, with damn near every shot being wallpaper material and enhanced by the ever so cool compositing. Considering Nagamina's comments about this fight from back before Wano even started, it's no surprise that this storyboard is as solid as it is, but I was really blown away with just how well Koyama depicted this fight, with it being such a far cry from his rather cramped efforts in the Whole Cake Island arc, and standing as his best storyboard on the anime so far. While the two supervisors, Shimanuki and Ito, do rear their heads quite a bit, with Shimanuki's stiff art actually looking rather polished, and Ito's line work and shading heavy art being quite possibly his best output on the series to date, it's definitely the key animators here that steal the show more than anything else. On top of the episode itself just being stupidly well animated in every right, with some subtle character acting from animators like Ting-Mu Yang, this is also the first One Piece episode to have webgen animators of any sort participating. Starting with animator and One Piece fan Saucelot's cut of Luffy blowing up his elephant gun to attack Kaido, which despite being corrected a bit by Shimanuki, has this insane sense of weight and inertia that I cannot get enough of, with Luffy's little stumble as he gets ready to attack being my absolute favorite part of the cut. Following him is none other than One Piece's own climax moment regular and my favorite animator on the series, Katsumi Ishizuka, who delivers Luffy's blow to Dragon Kaido, which may not be packed with masses of movement, but the weight and incredibly visceral and eye-catching art, smears, and fire-crackling-like effects work makes up for it wholeheartedly, finishing itself off with some sexy brushstroke impact frames that are reminiscent of those from Mob Psycho 100 character designer Yoshimichi Kameda. However, it's who comes up next in terms of highlights that stands as the definitive one, as famed animator Bahi JD, known for his work on series like Space Dandy, comes in with a short but incredibly idiosyncratic cut of Luffy clashing with Kaido in Gear 3rd, with his crazy three-dimensional animation that spawns several rotoscope memes being at the forefront of it all. Topping it all off with his extremely loose artwork and insane background animation that helps it possibly become one of the best pieces of animation in the entire One Piece franchise despite the short length, due to the sheer amount of crazy loose and weighty movement that's crammed in spite of that. Having the daunting task of following him up after that is someone that Black Clover fans will know in form of Ron Desio, whose blobby and simple webgen effects work dresses their finessed cut of Luffy jumping from rooftop to rooftop, which itself has some really cool smears and art in tow, along with some of the coolest usage of Luffy's powers that I've seen so far, with Luffy deciding to just start playing Spider-Man partway through the cut. And amidst all this webgen craziness, it's actually one of our two supervisors this episode, Hirotaka Ito, who ends the episode off with a powerful cut of Luffy's elephant Gatling. While it's certainly not a touch on some of the webgen goodness that came before it, Ito's snappy timing and ferocious artwork goes a long way in making this cut land as much as it should for the finale of the episode, with every relentless hit to Kaido being filled with such a jolt of energy, leaving Kaido absolutely wrecked and me absolutely astounded at how solid the animation was here. Not only did this episode really manage to knock it out of the park for what could be considered One Piece's first webgen episode, but it also delivered on Nagamine and the staff's promise to really do this fight, curb stomp or not, justice. With staff members like Hirotaka Ito still working on the episode in spite of their injuries caused by a bicycle accident, making me appreciate what's put on screen even more, just due to the sheer dedication of the staff. And when we still have Katsumi Tokoro and Shigefume Shengaki's episode next week, with the anime's golden boy Chu Young-seo and the likelihood of Pokemon star Takeshi Mainami appearing, it looks like we're nowhere near done with the definitive highlight of this arc so far. Shengaki's art may be a bit on the misshapen side more often than not, but that's not gonna stop anyone from waiting with bated breath for this hype-filled continuation. Anyways guys, that's it for now. I'm Skippy, and I'm just gonna go and acquire Lady Toki's fruit in order to skip forward.